What is up, guys? I am Neil Barrett, and today I am answering more of your questions. The NLL just started its playoff push. The WLL and PLL just wrapped up the championship series and are looking forward to their respective drafts next month. And the NCAA is gearing up for conference play. So there are plenty of topics to choose from. So let's get into your questions. The first one says, thoughts and predictions on the Swarm, bust or burst. To be completely honest, I'm not sure which is the best one, whether it's better to bust or burst. I think the idea is that bust is a traditional bust and burst is maybe like burst onto the scene. It's the good one. So we're going to operate under that assumption here and say in the short term this season, I'm not really sure it's either, honestly. Are they capable of winning the championship this year? Yes, the saying is always that defense wins championships, and I don't know that there's a better defense in the league right now than the Georgia Swarm. However, I don't know that the offense is strong enough for them to actually put up the kind of goals they're going to need to win the championship. But in a lot of ways, I think it is a burst onto the scene in the terms of this team is a lot better, I think, this year than we thought they would be. I know that there are some people out there who actually predicted the Swarm to be pretty good, but I think most people thought that the Swarm would be maybe in the hunt of making the playoffs. I don't think many people had them this high up the food chain already. So in that context, I think it is burst, and I think the next year or two with this current core plus a piece or two that they can add in this offseason or the next offseason could mean that the Georgia Swarm are a very good candidate for winning some of the next NLL championships. Next up, we have a question from the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Teddy Jenner, who asked, best limited edition shoe anyone has ever worn for a lacrosse game. I'm not going to lie, I couldn't even begin to try and compute ever. So I kind of limited it to this season. I've been doing a lot of shoe content this season, and it was really hard to try and limit it to one shoe. So I have 4 answers for you based on how you answer what a limited edition shoe is to you. The first category is a shoe that was widely produced and easily accessible at the time it was created, but for whatever reason, you just don't see in lacrosse that often. And here I also cheated and I have 2 answers because I just really couldn't decide between the 2. The first is Dane Smith wearing the Aunt Pearl colorway of the KD4s. I think that is an incredible shoe and I loved seeing him in it earlier this year. And the second answer is Brad Cree wearing the Jordan 0.5s in the childhood colorway. One, because I think this is an incredible looking shoe and looked amazing with the Toronto Rock uniform. And 2, because Brad Cree kind of shocked me a little bit with that shoe. As the meme goes,
I owe you an apology. I wasn't really familiar with your game.
Brad Cree, who knew you had it in you? The second way I'm choosing to define what an LE is maybe a shoe that did have a bit of a wider release, but for one reason or another was fairly hard to actually get your hands on. And in that case, I'm going with Lyle Thompson rocking a pair of Nike Kobe Protro 4s in the CHBL colorway. The Kobe 4 is a great silhouette, and the yellow of the CHBL colorway goes so well with the Swarm uniforms that I absolutely love this combo. And the fact that this was a shoe that was only released in several Asian markets meant that it was fairly hard to get your hands on. Lyle being a Nike athlete, I'm sure made that a lot easier, but still a very cool shoe to see on the NLL floors. And the third way of defining what a limited edition is something that is truly released in a limited quantity. And I know I said I was only going to do 4 shoes, but I've been thinking about it, and I think I'm going to do 5 shoes because I can't decide between 2. One is Taylor Jensen of the Rochester Nighthawks wearing his pair of Jewel Lloyd and Nike collaboration GT Cut 3s. I think those are such a cool shoe and not something I ever expected to see on the floor. But I also really like Zach Mans wearing the Nike Kobe Protro 8s in the What the colorway. As much as I thought we'd never see the Jewel Lloyd cut 3s on the NLL floor because they were just such a deep cut of a shoe, I am almost kind of more surprised to see the Kobe Pro Tro 8s in the What the colorway on an NLL floor, because that's the kind of shoe that I would expect a sneakerhead to like buy and just kind of sit up on a shelf somewhere and never really wear. So seeing that on the floor just absolutely blew my mind. The next question came from my Discord community. One of the Lax Lifers there asked, since your podcast is named after it, how do you feel about the Runout being one of the most poorly officiated rules in all of sports? Honestly, and I'm not trying to get like nitpicky or semantic, I'm not sure that I would say it was one of the worst rules officiated in sports. I think fouls in the NBA are awful. I think holding could be called on pretty much every play in football. I think soccer has gotten so bogged down in getting every single call right down to the millimeter that it's completely disrupted the flow of the game. So I'm not sure that I really agree with the idea that it is one of the most poorly officiated rules in sports, but also I'm not even sure it's one of the most poorly officiated rules in the game of lacrosse. If you think about how often a runout occurs in the game and how often it's called pretty blatantly incorrectly, I don't even think you're looking at one time a game, maybe not once every 2 games or anything. And so I actually think it's usually officiated fairly well. I do, however, think that probably what you're really getting at here is that often when it is incorrectly officiated, it's incorrectly officiated very poorly. I think some of that has to do with the speed of a shot going out of bounds and trying to evaluate who's closest at the time it went out of bounds being very difficult. There's a lot of geometry involved in it, and the fact that this guy might look farther away, but he's technically closer because the ball went out over here and he's here and this guy's over there. And, you know, it's kind of a mess. And then I think the other issue is that often a ref makes a call in the moment and wants to keep the game flowing and moving along. And they just kind of make a decision and run with it that from our vantage point with the cameras sitting up high and instant replay and stuff, we can see was maybe an incorrect call, but because of where they were on the field, maybe they couldn't see it, or maybe they just reacted too fast and then didn't want to correct themselves for whatever reason. And to that end, I don't really know what the answer is, because obviously I want referees to be able to make a call in the moment and also be able to correct themselves if they feel like it was incorrect. But like I talked about with soccer, I don't want to get into the habit of re-refereeing a game. So I don't really know what the answer is to fix it, because like I said earlier, I do think that when it is called incorrectly, it is usually very, very incorrect. But I think it's easier for us to tell that because of the vantage point that we have of cameras and the fact that we will see a replay that the refs don't get to see. But let me put that question out to the community. If you have an idea for how to improve the officiating of the runout, leave it in the comments. The next question comes from out in San Diego, and it is, will the Seals finally break through, or did they miss their window? Sort of like I did with the Swarm, I'm going to ask, do you mean this season, or do you mean with this kind of core group as a team? Because if you're asking about this season, while they have certainly gotten better over the course of the season, I still don't think that they have what they need to win a championship at the end of this season. But I think if we're talking about the core of this team and whether or not they can take the next step and lead this Seals team to the next level, I think they're in a much better position than most of us expected them to be in. I think Pat Cavanaugh is way farther along than anyone expected him to be. Connor Robinson, Trey LeClaire, and the timeless Wes Berg have formed a bit of a three-headed monster that I think could be very good over the next few years. I just think they need to tighten up on defense a little bit. If they can shore up their back end, they could be a very dangerous team over the next couple of seasons. So did they miss their window? No, but I don't think that this is the season for them. I think we're looking a year or two down the line when they can pick up some extra pieces to help strengthen this squad. But I do think they are in a very good position for that, and I think they have come along very nicely over the course of this season. Next up, we head over to the WLL, where someone says, the New York Charging is going to run the WLL. They were incredible during the championship series. I am soundly convinced that Madison Doucette is the best goalkeeper in the world right now, and Izzy Skane and Emily Harris-Chuck could light you up on any given night. They also play very good team defense, but I see two problems with them running the WLL. First and foremost, almost doesn't even need to be said, but this is sixes. Come May, when the WLL starts in Rhode Island, they won't be playing sixes anymore. They will be playing full field 10-on-10 lacrosse, and their roster will be different from the one they had at sixes. They will likely add several players. They may even lose several players. So it's really hard to claim that any one team is going to run the WLL this summer based on what they did at the championship series. And number two, the Palms and the Guard are going to have a lot to say about that. As far as I'm concerned, the best all-around player in the WLL right now is Ali Mastroeni. Jill Smith and Ellie Macera had breakout campaigns during the championship series, and they still have Taylor Moreno in net. And the Guard have arguably the best player on the planet right now, Charlotte Noor. So I'm not sure that I'm handing the trophy to the New York Charging just yet. Moving on, we had a hot take as someone said, Big Ten Lax is overrated. It has certainly been a tough start to the season for the Big Ten. Most notably, Maryland seems to have just completely fallen off the pedestal that they had built for themselves, but also Ohio State and Hopkins have also faced hurdles as well. Penn State arguably has the league's biggest wins with victories over Princeton and absolutely demolishing Cornell. But they also have two puzzling losses to Villanova and Navy. But while the league may be going through some difficult times, they're still very capable. Ohio State just played number 1 overall Notre Dame to a 1-goal game. When Penn State plays the way they're capable, they can beat anyone in the country. And Maryland still has arguably the best coach in the country and a locker room full of blue chip talent. So while it appears that it is in fact a down year for the Big Ten, and in that sense they are perhaps overrated, they're still going to have something to say come May. And the last one is about the PLL Draft. Since the PLL season is starting earlier this year, do you think some players from non-tournament teams could get drafted earlier than anticipated since they'll have a few more weeks of availability, or will teams stick to their guns and wait until their guy is ready? I don't have any insider information. I would say that if you have a guy out there that you want to go get and you think he is the right fit for your team, not taking him over 2 to 4 weeks of availability is a mistake. The long-term health of your team should be your highest priority, and making a decision like that based on 1 to 2 weeks is not the kind of decision-making that's going to work out for you in the long run. If I think that Joey Spallina is the guy that could lead my team for the next decade, picking Mikey Weishar because Towson likely won't make the deep playoff run that Syracuse and Joey Spallina are projected to is a disservice to my team. And before anyone comes at me in the comments, none of this is to say that Mikey Weishar is a bad player and that no one should pick him over Joey Spallina. If that's what the team feels like they should do it. I'm just using 2 names as an example. The 2 caveats I have here are, 1, obviously, if all things are equal and you literally cannot make up your mind between 2 guys and one is available 2 weeks earlier, sure, maybe that is a deciding factor. I am not sure how many of those situations truly exist. I feel like most coaches know their team and what they want from players that they bring in enough to know that they want this guy or that guy. But in the situation where all other things are equal, yes, that could maybe play into it. And scenario 2 is as we get into the later rounds of the draft, specifically that 4th round, where we have traditionally seen guys not make the team, some of them not even make it into camp. So when we get into the later rounds and you're looking at a guy that you want to bring into camp and see, a player who's likely not going to have the ability to even be seen during camp, could be the kind of guy that you skip over in order to get someone that you can actually get into camp with you. But when we're talking about these guys up at the upper end of the draft, I don't think that there's any way that you're picking a guy for the long-term health of your team based on their availability for a couple of weeks. All right, so my dumb butt totally forgot to do an outro. So unfortunately for you guys, this is going to have to serve as my outro. I appreciate everyone that sent in questions. If you have other questions, other thoughts, hot takes, whatever it is, send them in. I will answer another round of these questions probably once a month or so. So if you got something, hit me up. We'll talk about it. But that's all I got for you guys right now. I will be back later with more. So until then, I'll catch you guys in the comments.